recording now. Okay.
Right.
So, Sophie, thinking about your loved one, Zach, how has his care needs changed moving from the moderate form of ME to severe symptoms of ME?
I think things were actually much more difficult when he was moderate, partly because we had a lot of difficulty even getting a diagnosis, and the treatments that we were offered for diagnosis. So that's about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the treatment at that stage was graded exercise therapy and cognitive behaviour therapy. So
Mm-hmm.
fit yourself well and exercise yourself well.
Mm-hmm.
Which we now know there's a considerable evidence base showing that they actually make people a lot sicker.
Yes.
So Zach went into remission for about a year
Yep.
after he had completed his graded exercise therapy. So that was a lot of appointments, and he was still able to go to school. He then, when he was starting to be in remission, was still going to school. So that was quite high need because he could only go intermittently. I needed to miss a lot of work. So I would go to work, then I would go home, pick him up, take him to school, and then I would go back to work. And then I would go and pick him up, take him home, and then I would go back to work and do a couple more hours, and then I would go home. And at that stage, I also had two younger children.
Right.
I still have two younger children, but they're now young adults. So a really considerable care need. So that's like the physical logistics of caring.
Mm.
Um, and by that point we were, and then there were going out to clinic visits for therapy. And he was seeing a psych as well, which I'm sure he won't mind me disclosing. Um,
Well,
but
as recommended.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, in terms of like practical therapy, we were just on practical, like day to day. What do we do? We were just on our own, just trying to work out things. We weren't getting much help from the GP. So I would sort of go to the GP with him if he was in a flare. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that was sort of moderate. And then he really pushed his way through. So the transition from moderate to severe coincided with COVID, VCE, which he really had high aspirations for and ended up getting, an incredibly high mark. His aim was to, ducks at least one or two subjects, and came
Wow.
very close to doing.
Yeah.
Um, Thankfully, it was during COVID, so he could do it from his bed. Um,
Mm.
so all along during this time, whenever he was able to go to school, he would go to school. Um, and then he finished school and went to university. And so was really trying to live this independent life. And about 3 months into university, just said, I can't do this.
Yeah. Oh.
Um, and like the load for him of organising, oh, okay, so these friends have asked me out and these friends have asked me out and I've got this work to do. Working out how you could do that. So it required this sort of, 50-year-old executive function, which he sort of has. But of course, none of his friends had that. So they're just like,
Mm.
why can't you come out? Why can't you come and stay all night? So
Mm.
the isolation was already setting in.
Mm-hmm.
And that period was quite but also mentally heavy because I was really aware that, I'm wanting to give him as much independence and not be hovering,
Mm.
but knowing, and, really which 18-year-old wants their parent waiting outside the pub to pick them up. But
Mm-hmm.
that was the only way that he was going to be able to access
Mm.
social engagement. Um,
So, so if you don't mind, when he was at school, what sort of hours was he able to engage with, his work? Was it, maybe 4 hours a day or sort of like half a day?
yeah, maybe half a day. And he would do, like, if he was there across lunchtime, he would then go and see teachers and do conferencing with teachers. So, and things had sort of fallen apart socially a bit at school.
Yes, of course, that would impact.
So, you're a bit disconnected. And also, if your aim is like, I can only do this thing,
Yeah.
which was the study part. For some people, they would go, oh, well, I'm just, forget the study. I'm just going to go and socialise.
Yeah.
It's not really to say that one or the other is a better choice, but that was what his choice was. So he was really keen on maximising his time.
And then it's when he transitioned into university that required, well, a massive energy output to even learn the different expectations.
Well, interestingly, so Zach has this really, he's really engaged with learning. Like, that's sort of his special interest.
Yeah.
Is learning stuff.
Yeah.
So Zach also happens to be autistic, late diagnosed. And so, and the co-occurrence of ME in the neurodivergent community is just supremely high.
Yeah.
So what really was difficult for him was discovering that his brain fog was so bad, and using all the energy to just be sort of upright and at uni and with people, it really depleted his battery so far. And I really think he was sort of starting the day with no spoons anyway.
Yeah.
So he just then found he couldn't even concentrate on the work, which really I think was sort of one of the most distressing things about that phase, because this thing that you've had, that you've been working towards, then was sort of out of his reach because of his illness.
Okay. So gaining a diagnosis of severe ME, how has that changed then? How he conducts his day to day?
So we don't have a formal severe ME diagnosis. And in fact, so we've had a really supportive GP, but we sort of got to a point where it was like, I really don't know where else to send you about this. So co-occurringly, Zach also has a lot of gut issues. He's now gluten intolerant, all of those things. So all of this, each one of these things, he's also got POTS. So all of these things require, you're off to see the specialists. So it becomes very, it's a real barrier to finding the right practitioner if there's no guarantee. He was sort of like, he sort of got to a point where he was like, it's not worth my energy
to go to try this specialist just in case.
Just in case.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
And also the negative impact. So just going to an appointment can cause a crash. You also have to build up to go to the appointment, which also causes a crash. And then you may be sitting in that appointment and be told, oh no, you might get somebody who's not affirming about ME, and it's the reality of it. And so then that causes much greater emotional distress. And because he'd experienced a bit of that, that was a real barrier to then trying to find different practitioners who might be more helpful. So there's this real flow-on effect of historical medical gaslighting
Yeah, it's a
on
good way to
seeking
describe it.
future help.
Yeah. So, is he independent in any of his day-to-day activities, or are you
Um,
doing,
so in terms of like
say,
self-management, he can get himself to the toilet, he can shower. However, luckily enough, we have this very old shower that has a built-in seat in it,
right?
which coincidentally years ago we looked at taking out and we didn't, and now we think, hallelujah.
Yeah,
Um, but when he first became very severe, like I don't know, there was probably 18 months where it was really difficult to even have somebody else come into the room to deliver meals.
because of his sensory sensitivity to
Sensory
smell.
sensitivities, so smell, noise, light, just the demand of having to think of what to say. For a while, he really struggled with using his language.
Mm-hmm.
So he would say sometimes, I just can't even think of the words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so, we had sort of that bedding set up where, he could, he had mouthwash and, all the things to maintain hygiene where you can't move.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And were you still going to work, and was he staying at home alone, or were there some other supports in place?
So, yes, I was still working. So I've really worked all the way through and just been really lucky that I've had a great employer.
Mm.
Um, and so Zach's the oldest, and then he's got a brother who's like 18 months younger, and a sister who's 18 months younger than him.
Yeah.
So they were around and in and out.
Popping in just
And
to oversee if he was okay, or
yeah, so
throughout
they
the
might
day.
pop in and see him, or they would report in to me, or I might say to them, I can't get home at the right time. But so Zach would be at home alone during the day. So I would prepare meals. So I would take breakfast up and his lunch would be ready and that would be taken up. All his medication. So I do his medications once a week and they're all put into things.
Like a Webster
Um,
pack? Or
no, so I don't do that because some of them are naturopath
yep. Okay. Yep.
and some are standard pharmacy.
Yeah.
Um, so we do that. Um, and that's I still do that. So I
Yep.
sort of have meals prepared, and there was a lot of trial and error about what would work and what wouldn't work. He has a fridge in his room, and a really good collection of snacks, and he also has a kettle.
Mhm.
And his room is next to, so it has an ensuite.
Yep. So
So he's pretty well self-contained up there.
okay. So it sounds like he's remained independent for his own personal cares, but all of the meal preparation and shopping and like laundry and all of those sort of
Oh, yeah,
instrumental tasks that are performed at home, you're providing all of that for
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Would you say that you would do that for your other children as well, or do they do
Yeah.
some of their
So
own?
the youngest is in year 12 now. So yeah, I still do that, and she is waiting for a diagnosis of ME herself.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. So you wouldn't really believe that, but
Yeah.
anyway,
Okay.
um,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I do still
Most
do
of that.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
What about, say, even scheduling his appointments, if
oh
he has
yeah,
any, or is that something that you do
I do all of that.
all of that? Okay.
So any administrative task,
You're
I do that and I coordinate that with him.
Mhm.
And so, you also have to make sure that you don't have 2 appointments in a week.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's all the negotiation also that goes with, this appointment will only be able to take this long.
Yeah.
So with whoever the appointments are with,
Yeah.
getting the disability pension was quite a feat.
Yes.
Because of course they have to see the person, and they were quite insistent that Zach be able to come in, and I was like, no, have you read the file that I've sent you?
Yeah.
This person hasn't actually left their house for 3 years at that point. Um,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of administration. So at the moment we've just started NDIS funding
Right.
application.
Well, congratulations,
So
because
that's
I'm sure that was a lot of effort.
yeah. So it looks so far even just getting into contact with them has been reasonably smooth.
Mhm.
And we do have all the information. I've got it all there. I'm also Zach's power of attorney.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to speak to organisations for and on his behalf.
Yeah.
However, as you know, with our conversation, like our emails and organising this, it's really, there's that fine line always of keeping agency
Mhm.
for Zach. So, really, even though I'm speaking on his behalf a lot of the time,
Yeah.
is making sure it's his voice and not my voice.
Well, to be perfectly honest, Sophie, I am interested in how your life has been impacted as well. I mean, I can just, in every way, I can imagine. But are there any like socially, work,
Um,
career wise? I mean,
oh, look, it's interesting actually. So I work as a counsellor. I used to work I still work at a school. I work at a school and a clinic as a counsellor.
mm,
Um, and I did my master's while all of this was going on. So, which people go, oh, that's so amazing. Um, it is sort of a release, like that's, I'm not going to go off and have a massage or do anything like that. And so while it was really hard work, it actually was the me time. So when I was studying,
yeah,
I'm not thinking about ME.
yeah,
Which so sometimes, you then really struggle with how selfish that feels.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's really had quite a profound impact
Mm,
in our lives. So I'd have to say, even though we're surrounded by incredibly supportive family and friends, there's like there's word understanding, but people really can't imagine what it is. And even when you say, um, imagine waking up and all you can do is be. You can't watch TV. You can't watch your computer. You can't listen to music. You can no longer read. You can't keep up with your friends, and they don't understand why you haven't answered that text message that you opened 3 days ago.
mhm.
Um, it's like it. It's sort of unexplainable.
Yep,
So people sort of get it, but they sort of don't get it.
yep. So
Because then they'll say, oh, will I send a voucher, or I'll drop over I'll drop over a candle, which is so kind, but you go, yeah, can't stand smelly stuff, or
so
um,
what do you advise? What's the practical support and help that you recommend or need
um,
or wish you
what
had?
is, what I wish I had done What I wish I had done was go to the Carer Gateway.
The carer
And
gateway.
so the Carers Network Gateway or Gateway Network or whatever it is. So if
Yeah.
you are a carer, you can speak to the Carers Network, and they will maybe send you a cleaner, or they'll help in some practical way,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't do
Mm-hmm.
because I'm thinking this might be over soon. Um, and I was also sort of being told that, or not being told that, but not being told if you don't do this stuff, this is what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I wish earlier that I had trusted my gut and not listened to some of the stuff that I listened to. So, and just thought, no, and now there is a dialogue around stop, rest, pace, which wasn't really as out there as much.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And do you mean, are you accessing most of this information online through support groups or the internet, or how were you finding?
um, so probably the best thing I did was to ring Emerge
Oh, yeah.
and speak to their nurse.
Yeah.
So their nurse counsellor,
Yeah.
who was so affirming. So it was the first person I ever spoke to who just went, yeah, he needs to rest,
Yes.
and that's it. You do nothing else.
Yeah.
Whereas the message from everywhere else had been different. And so when I came home and said, okay, this is what we're doing, and Zach was like, yeah, okay, great, even though he had to sort of do some brain retraining as well. Whereas I had felt all along like I'd been sort of wanting to do that, but you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you, oh, well, you need to try and walk up to the letterbox or whatever.
Mm.
And so you think, oh, I should do that.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's whatever. Um, so I think trusting your gut and affirming your child or whoever you are caring for,
Mm.
because that was when there was a turnaround in Zach's mental health. And he was able to see hope, sounds really bizarre, hope within the boundaries of the illness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Understand that.
otherwise you are waiting to get better.
Yeah.
So actually life is just on hold until I'm better, and
Mm.
then I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing. So that really was the narrative that wasn't explicitly being said, but was sort of there, the
Mm.
vibe of it.
Mm.
And because you're just like, I feel really stupid saying this now because I'm thinking, why didn't I just know that and do it? But because you're juggling so many balls,
Yeah.
and you're also thinking, what's the impact on my other two children? What's the impact on my partner?
Yep.
And if there's not necessarily agreement, because we're all just sort of swimming through the murk together and coming up with our own stuff.
Mm.
Um, so I do know why it took so long, but that call to emerge made all the difference.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to access the carer's pension or any carer's benefit. And you have to ring the carers network to get onto them to let them know what your needs are. And that is my next job after
Okay.
I do the NDIS.
Right. So are you getting advice for the NDIS application from any of the online support groups?
Yeah, I do quite a lot of trawling. So I'm on a Facebook
Great.
ME and the NDIS, I think.
Great.
And Emerge have really excellent, helpful tips and techniques.
Mm-hmm.
So Emerges is more, fact sheets and tip sheets,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the Facebook groups are more this is what, this is what I asked for and this is what I got.
Mm.
So it's it's a lot of trawling.
Mm.
However, it's it I think gives good background of how to ask for things.
Yeah, so you'll be able to go in with knowledge of what to ask for and what not to
Yeah.
say, what language to use. Will you get any help from have functional capacity assessment
Um,
report?
so the FCA we didn't have to do for
Okay.
the disability pension. So
Yeah.
the medical evidence
Yeah.
was enough.
Yes, that's
Um,
great.
so I had a letter from the POTS
Mm-hmm.
specialist, from psychologist, from GP, from
Mm-hmm.
um, the previous clinics that had treated him,
Mm-hmm.
when he initially was sick. So I had letters from naturopath, and there was somebody else who gave me a letter. So, I think the DSP just went, oh, this woman, too much
Great.
stuff. Um,
Well, I'm glad it was
NDIS,
a positive outcome.
yeah. I mean, they did say to me, oh, you'll need to do one of these. And I said, yeah, I'm not sure how you're going to do that because they can't leave their bed. But anyway,
Mm.
um,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So, how do you cope with Zach's emotional health and his potential social isolation? How do you manage your response to that?
Uh, hmm.
I guess you're in a very good position within your work,
Yeah.
although doing it for somebody else is often not as easy as counseling yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I think the fact that he trusts me with those really big emotions and so it's a matter of being available. Um, and luckily, I sort of can get home and then we can talk like after he's had dinner sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we might go for weeks without sort of really talking,
Mm-hmm.
and then like it's inconsistent, depending on energy level and just whether you want to be talking about that stuff. Like, he doesn't actually want to be talking about that stuff all the time,
Mm-hmm.
which is a real challenge. Nice segue into this real challenge of not only does he feel isolated socially, but also community-wise, like, in the ME community, um, he's not really a part of many groups. Like he's on boards and stuff and looks at things um, but in terms of, say, social media, like the people that are out there in social media, he really feels like there's this need that he should be doing more. And I'm like, well, no, you're like, you just because you've got ME doesn't mean that you have to be an advocate.
Mm.
So that's a real inner struggle that he has.
Mm.
He's sort of is coming to grips with it. The
Mm-hmm.
social isolation is a really fluctuating thing. It sort of depends on what time of the year it is. Like, it's interesting, if it's that big break in the middle of the year at uni, and so he can see what people are up to. That's quite distressing. The beginning of the year is, not great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because people are moving on. Most of his cohort have now finished their degree, or they might be, starting their second degree, or,
Yeah.
really people are just sort of going on and living their lives the way they thought that they were going to live them, or however it's planned out.
Yeah.
Um, and, he's
Life
sort of,
is altered. Yeah.
he's sort of, still in a bedroom in his parents' house.
Yeah.
So it's, how do I deal with it? I just sort of think it's nothing compared to what he has to live with.
Right. Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Um, well, even though clearly I'm not that unaffected. um, yeah, I sort of think, wow, if this is the hardest thing I have to hear today, it's not that hard.
Yeah, I see.
Um,
So you're
so
able to gain a perspective for
uh,
yourself. You
oh,
sort
sorry,
you
you
get
glitched.
you gain a perspective of yourself in comparison to say Zach.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I'll sound a bit sort of all selfless. I'm not. Um, I just like that's sort of where we're at. Sorry, I'm finding it hard to answer that question. Um,
That's
it's sort of
okay.
like it's where like we are where we are in life, and so it's not it's not where we thought we'd be or where we planned to be. But if this is what I can do, then that's what I can do.
Yeah,
Um, so not yeah. I don't know. Did I answer that question?
you did. Do you feel like your needs are being met?
Um, I think my needs have changed. So if I was attached to what I thought, like to the trajectory that I thought of, like, great, my kids are, old enough and independent enough, and now I'm just going to go trekking off,
Mm-hmm.
and, take some big long holidays. So,
Yeah.
a lot of my friends, their kids have finished school. And so, at the moment, I think I've got 4 friends who are traveling around Europe independently of each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're all on these amazing trips
Mm.
going away. Um, so people say things to you like, oh, you can't sacrifice your life and you can't stop living and you can't give up everything. To which I sort of go, I'm not giving up my life, but also it's like I'm not going to be having a good time if I go off overseas. And people are kind, like people say, oh, we'll come and look after Zach.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a bit like, really? Like,
You wouldn't be
it,
comfortable with that, or you just don't think it's necessary because you wouldn't
um,
enjoy yourself
well,
if you left.
he's not a dog. I sort of, somebody said it to me recently. They said, oh, I'll come and look after him. And I sort of went, he's not a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds awful. I'm really aware that that sounds terrible, but it's not sort of just feeding, and because that doesn't honor the situation that he is in his life right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he does not. So Zach was born the most independent child. Walked at 9 months. He had to do everything on his own. Very independent all the way through his life until he got sick, and
Yeah.
now he's dependent on me. So now he can't choose what food he wants to eat. Well, he can because we do all this stuff, but you can't go into a shop and just pick something out
Mm-hmm.
and think, oh, what do I want to eat today? Yeah, I think I'll get that.
Yeah. So he's lost some autonomy over that. Um,
Completely.
so,
So people offering to come and stay, it's really nice. However, is he comfortable with you coming? Does he know you? There's
mhm.
very few people he allows into his, no, that sounds ridiculous, that he's comfortable having in his space.
Yeah.
So your family might come over and they might say, I'll just pop up and see Zach. And I'm a bit like, that's not really the way it works.
Yeah. So in that situation, for example, would you or how does that like to communicate? What's easiest for him? Would you like text him or call him and say, "Hey, grandma's here," hypothetically? Do you want visitors or?
Um, yeah, so that is a really big impact actually, because both John and I come from large families, and we used to always do we would do most of the hosting. And we always sort of had a lot of people around, just did a lot of entertaining. So
Yeah.
that really has gone because there can't be any noise. So you can imagine what that's like with two teenage siblings. You're sort of like, if you're having your friends over, can you be in the other part of the house? And so, which is challenging to navigate with siblings.
Mm.
And also it makes Zach feel awful.
Yeah.
Because he knows that that's how our lives have changed.
Mm-hmm.
So if people come over, there's no longer that sort of spontaneous people dropping in.
Mm.
So if somebody just dropped in, like, I wouldn't even offer it.
Yeah.
No surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And if something like, if it's somebody's birthday and we're having family over, I would then say, so we're going to do this on this day. How is that? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And, how are you feeling? And he might say, I'll try and come down.
Mm-hmm.
He just has to see how he is.
Yeah.
And everyone's pretty used to that now.
Yeah.
So that's good. In terms of I'm going to the shop, what would you like? That's all text.
Yeah. Right.
So I'll text, do you want dinner now? Like, it's all text.
To be honest, I do that to my children too, because they're in their own parts of the house, and I
Yeah.
think that I do that, and I could go up and talk to them, but must.
Look, it's interesting. In some of my clinical work, I quite often say, if every time you're talking, like this with your child and it's not going well, have you thought of maybe finding a different way of having the communication, because it reduces that load and the demand for them to respond in the moment.
Yeah.
And it gives the space and time. So for Zach, that works very well, but I find it does work well for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sophie, what do you wish for yourself and for Zach? Are they the same wishes or are they different in the future?
At the moment, I think they're a bit the same because
That's the alarm.
that's the alarm. I know. I think my wish for Zach is that he can have some independent life, independent form of living.
Yeah.
Which we've just started talking about recently, and how would that look? And what supports, and so that really has generated this NDIS conversation.
So do you mean in some sort of like own home with supports coming in? Or
yeah, I think so. So, if a lot of the stuff that I do can be, he feels like there's a lot of stuff that I do that could probably be replaced, and then we just get to, commune.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is sort of great, with some of the other stuff taken away, and also gives him more agency over it.
Yeah.
So
what about for you? What's your wish for yourself?
My wish for myself, gosh, there's lots of them. I
Top
think
three.
I think to see him settled and independent.
Yeah.
And to be able to access purposeful activity.
Mm-hmm.
So not, running about or whatever, but to be able to take photos again. So whether that means he has access to an electronic wheelchair so that he can actually go outside
Mm-hmm.
and move around in the world
Yeah.
and take photos.
Yeah.
Like that would be incredible because at the
Right.
moment he can't do that.
Right. Right.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah, I that would be my top wish, is to see him being able to live some form of independent living,
Of his
because it's
choosing.
like he's still 13.
Yeah.
Like he's 22,
Yeah.
but he's pretty much he's been on and off with this since he was 13,
Yeah.
which brings another challenge of, how parents, it's no longer a 13-year-old, but they've been sick all this time.
Yeah.
And now you go, oh, actually, yeah, I wouldn't have that much involvement in my other 23-year-old's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It must be a fine balance to find by providing enough support, but not
yeah,
stopping him from flourishing in his own way.
yeah.
Uh,
I think that sense of personal agency. So, luckily, unconditional positive regard is, the bedrock of my counselling practice.
right.
And so that's sort of what I do there. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
everything is person centered. And
Yeah.
so it's all, what do you need? Um, and so sometimes he may say, I don't know. And so then we can talk about that when he's available to talk about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you share a proud moment?
Oh, well, um, oh, lots of them really.
Yep.
So he's always outward looking.
Mhm.
So, he's proud of his siblings and he really champions them, even though he doesn't have the physical voice to do so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but more recently,
Yeah.
and this is like a doing thing, which is even more exciting, is he has put some photos into a competition, into a photographic
Oh,
competition,
fantastic.
which is really, enormous,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
enormous, just
Yeah.
um, to be able to hold the mental, like all of the hurdles to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
That's
just sort of
great.
generally as an artist,
Yeah.
but
Wow.
also with all these other things
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
So,
Does he
so yeah,
does he take photos? Do you take him out to take photos? Or
uh,
is he photographing?
really, really, really.
Oh yeah.
Um, so we went, there's a beautiful gardens near us. And so we drove up there. So it's a 10-minute drive.
Yes.
We drove up there about 3 months ago
Hmm.
and park the car right there and you can go. But of course, we don't have a wheelchair. Um, and I forgot to take a seat for him to sit on. But of course, if you take like a picnic seat, they've got arms and things. And so, like, it just doesn't work because, of course, he can't stand up for very long.
Yeah.
And like the drain of it, it's just too much. But he loves he takes photos of everything. He
Yeah.
used
That's
to,
great.
when he was a young teen, used to, go to the silos and,
Yeah.
you know,
So, is
yeah.
that his special interest, or is that what he was wanting to study at uni, or is it different?
No, he wanted to study environmental science and Indigenous studies.
Hmm.
So the interplay between those, and really he wanted to go and work and live in national parks and
Yeah.
do that. But he's always had an interest in photography.
Right.
Um, so
That's great.
that's but that is something, that he can do
Yeah.
from a
And
wheelchair.
I hope that with, the NDIS will be able to fund a lot of that equipment to enable him to be able to
Yeah.
pursue those interests.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping.
Yeah.
So I think my pride is probably, the sending photos off to the competition is part of it, but more that he has this optimism about life, even in the horror of what life is.
Okay.
Sometimes, like, he can still see,
Yeah.
he just doesn't give up hope.
Yeah.
And so, if you live with somebody like that, then you go, yep, okay. But it's not toxic positivity. Buzzword in our lives.
Oh,
Yeah.
as we're finishing, is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
I feel like I've touched on most things.
Yeah.
Um, I'd have to
Anything?
say I'm feeling a bit brain dead.
Yeah, that's
So
okay.
if you had a question to ask me, I could answer it.
Um,
Um,
oh, I think we've pretty much well covered most of them that I had pre-given you. Maybe services you wish were available to maintain the health and well-being of your whole family. Is that it sounds like you have some informal support at hand, but it may not necessarily be the practical, tangible type that you need. Um,
yeah. And you
and
need to be able to ask for help, which I'm not great at doing, I'd have to say.
that is true.
In fact, I'm pretty much allergic to it. Um,
So if
so,
it was more formalized
yeah,
support services, would you?
yeah, there might be more of a hope of me asking for that. Um, Look, it's interesting looking down the barrel of getting a second child diagnosed. So this time around, I know what I'm looking for and looking at.
Mhm.
And I'm quite surprised that I had somebody recommend graded exercise therapy to me just the other day. So
Wow.
they may have got a little bit of a serve from me
Yeah.
and
Well, it is the
directed.
current it's the current Australian guidelines, which are completely outdated. So if you
It's Oh,
it
yes.
you
Yes,
can
I
see
went on to the
where
RACGP and,
you can
you
see
know,
where it comes from, but yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of our purpose as a group, as is emerges to make people that make policies and these clinical guidelines realize that in fact people with M do not respond positively to those treatments, but there's
Yes.
many others that they will and can help.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, yes, it flummoxes me, really. That'd be the best way of putting it, that we do not follow the World Health Organization. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
um, so it's
So
having the time and the energy to think about what do I need and then being able to ask for it. So I think all of that shines a light on the lack of visibility of ME
mhm,
and general societal understanding of it,
yeah,
um,
agree.
and how stigmatized it still is.
Yeah. So were you at, can I just confirm, were you, Zach doesn't have a formal severe ME diagnosis?
No.
And okay, is that because the specialists that you need, is it like a neurologist or a rheumatologist that's willing to make the diagnosis that still eludes you?
I would have to find somebody who I was willing to unleash on Zach.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so yeah, I think that's the thing. I probably need a rheumatologist. So it's interesting. I now am looking for a rheumatologist
Yeah.
because the two that I have been referred to, one of them said, that's not really my area of specialty. And the other one has said, come back to me at the end of October because I'm overwhelmed by
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah. So that's another one of our goals too, is to create a list of clinicians who are helpful, because
Yeah,
that's the biggest barrier, is obtaining the diagnosis that you need to get the funding, to get the support that you need to enable your loved one to live an independent
yeah.
life.
So it's fascinating. So Emerge have started one of those as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Um, so do you do
idea
much work with
with Emerge.
Emerge or
No, we are based in Brisbane, which doesn't matter where we're based, but we use a diagnostic classification called the International Consensus Criteria, which was specifically developed to differentiate ME from other illnesses like CFS, make a
ah
clear kind of distinction.
yeah
And we are a volunteer organisation at the moment with clinicians and researchers, and people with lived experience, all trying to, I guess our dream is to get a clinic here based in Brisbane up and running for people to come to, because time and time again, we're told that we've got nowhere to go. People
yeah
with ME, make something and we will come.
oh absolutely
So, and
absolutely
I mean, the biggest barrier we find are medical doctors who, ME doesn't neatly fit the medical model, and not many, GPs are reluctant to be associated with ME. So it's quite
yeah
vital, but it's not
it's
one that's not worth fighting for. For
oh absolutely
because there are
absolutely
so many Australians confined to their beds and homes with ME, and
yeah
it's not fair.
oh unbelievable the impact
Yeah,
um it has on lives. And so I think like we're really lucky. I had friends who had ME when I was younger, so I'd already had some exposure to it.
yeah, that's
I mean,
amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible, really,
Mm.
because when Zach first got sick, the first GP said, "Oh, well, I think they're depressed," and I said, "No,
Mm.
no, they got sick with a terrible liver virus that just wiped them out, and they've never got better."
Yeah,
So, of course, they're depressed,
yeah, yeah,
but that is not um,
yeah,
the primary presenting problem. It's just the most obvious one.
yeah. So I guess with the ICC criteria, the characteristic feature of ME is post-exertional
The post,
neuroimmune exhaustion, and
yeah,
without that, you know, that's the hallmark of ME in my mind. I think in our mind,
absolutely,
along
yeah.
with all of the other symptoms, and which is essentially the entire body's affected.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Everything, so we have, ice gloves, ice booties, I've got more ice packs than you could poke a stick at.
yeah,
But
yeah,
then sometimes also you need a heated blanket.
yeah,
Weighted blankets really help.
yeah,
Um, but PEM and PEEN, so they are the things that have highlighted for my youngest, where
yeah,
I've gone, yeah, that's not just tired.
yeah. It's
That's
different.
not just sick. It's this cycle.
Mm.
Um, so in a sense, I have year 12 to thank for that.
Wow. And you've obviously had some experience which has been well, I guess beneficial. Even I'd never even heard of it until um, it crossed my research desk, and I was like, "Oh, what is this?" So
Oh, wow.
uh, yeah, I think it's not surprising that the majority of the public don't have common knowledge about this, and
Absolutely.
they did. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's a scourge, and people just sort of look at it, like people just look at it and go, "You just push through."
Oh, yeah. That's not going to work. I'm like an occupational therapist. So we, look at people living with ME and can help in many ways, but improving their environment with assistive technology is really helpful. And of course, as you know, energy conservation is
Is
really
number
kind of
one.
the main self-management strategy.
Yeah.
Um, but there's lots of different equipments, which I'm hoping if and when you get NDIS approval, will be funded for things that can be very helpful.
That's what we're hoping. Like, Zach needs a new bed. I'd really love to have this uh a wheelchair. Like, I think that could be
Definitely,
life changing
definitely,
for him.
definitely.
Um, so
Because
yeah,
whatever energy he can save in his mobility can be redirected for other things that he actually wants to do.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
No, it would be great. So, because then you sort of go, okay, so then we look at, okay, where do we live? Well, let's live somewhere where you are close enough to be able to even get yourself to the shops.
Yep, it's all possible. Yeah.
So, it's we live in Melbourne, in a Melbourne really, sort of where it's some 10 k's out.
Yeah.
But Zach's like, he'd really like to be probably in a more rural environment.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily full on country outback, but um, just somewhere not as dense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, we've reached our time.
we have.
Thank
Um,
you.
Thanks so much, Nicole. I feel like I waffled on quite a bit about stuff.
That's
I have tried
okay. That's
editing.
the Yeah, that's the idea. And I have one more request.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, may I send you via email a template to include a little sort of a blurb about yourself and Zach for the webinar promotional
Yeah,
material.
yeah.
So soon we're trying to develop a list of the speakers and a little sort of, we call it an abstract, but it's just
Oh, yeah.
a little blurb about them.
Oh, great.
I
Um,
will email, no hurry. That will be for the 10th, I think, of August.
oh, yeah.
Is when the live panel will take place. So I'll email you a template to respond to in your own time.
Oh, that'll be fantastic. But yes, just, tell me you want it a couple of days before, otherwise it'll
All right, I'll give you a deadline. That's
give
fine.
me a deadline. Yeah, no deadline is no good. Um, I was just in Brisbane for the weekend. I was up there for the ADPA conference.
The what for?
The ADPA, which is the ADHD Professional
Okay. Oh yeah.
Association. So
Where was that held?
that was at the Western.
The Western.
Um,
Oh,
so- yeah,
in the
yeah, right in
city.
the middle
In the,
of,
the city. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't suppose you ate at the restaurant there.
No, I did not. Even,
Oh, I
yes.
I went there for dinner. It's a kind of Italian, I think, and it was delicious.
Yes, because I think Guy Grossi is the chef.
That is why. Yes, you're right.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I love Guy Grossi because, of course, he's from Melbourne. And I didn't realize he'd gone up there. And so I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God.
That's
Yeah,
good.
no. So yeah, which was great.
Okay.
That's lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, it was all right. I was at the Gold Coast, so jumping out of a plane for my 50th birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. And
It
you
was,
know,
thank you. It's a few weeks ago, but yeah, I was down there doing crazy things. But we did have lovely weather, thankfully.
oh yeah, no, it was beautiful.
Nice and clear.
Yeah,
Mm.
better than Melbourne, let me tell you.
All right.
Wow.
Well, thank you
So
again
nice to meet you, Nicole.
for your time. You have my email contacts. If you ever want to reach out for any reason, please feel free.
Yeah, thanks. And
Um,
anything I can do, like you know,
thank you.
as you can tell, with
I
my
appreciate
heart.
it.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was lovely to meet you.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I will end the recording and I will be in contact, and I will also